Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Miss Emma Jones from AMPT, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jason. I'm really excited to be here today.
I'm super excited to have you along for the ride with me again today as well. And we met initially back in April when I was in London for the B2B e-commerce world event, and I'm their global MC. And so we had a chance to chat. You had a chance to speak on stage. It was very cool to hear from you, but you were doing something very different back then. You were the Strategic Partnerships and Alliances Lead. Wow, that's a mouthful, for the Department for Business and Trade in the UK. And look, you've gone on to do something else. Obviously, you were there with the Department of Business and Trade for nearly 8 years. So this gives you a pretty solid grounding in all things growth, all things digital. You held multiple roles with them over the years, formerly e-commerce and retail lead, international trade advisor. So look, this thing with AMPT, before we get into what AMPT is and does, this is not your first digital rodeo, is it?
No, it's not. I've lived overseas and I've been in digital touch points and routes to market now for, gosh, probably longer than I care to admit, but probably about 25 years actually, when I add it all up. I actually launched one of Dubai's first digital agencies about 25 years ago.
Wow, what an exciting journey. And what got you into digital to begin with? Like, I've been in the industry for 26 years, so there's not that many of us that have either no hair or gray hair to show for our trouble of being in the industry for over 2 decades. I fell into the industry, and I find that many of the people that have more than 2 decades of experience, they didn't necessarily know where digital was going to go at the start, but they certainly knew they wanted to be a part of it wherever it went. And how did you decide digital was your happy place?
So I come from a traditional advertising background, and we started to build websites. And it was just being able to identify that the trend was moving towards digital, and and also in terms of like cost per acquisition, and your CPMs were a lot lower than TV or radio or print advertising. And it was also the fact, the metrics and the measurability of it. So it was just being able to have all that kind of creative experience with the data nerdy head on as well. And I was just like, this is the way the world is going to go. And I'm an early adopter. So yeah, that was why I was like, digital is going to be my focus. Yeah.
Yeah, that resonates because back then, if you were in the world of marketing, advertising, like pre-digital, because I'm old enough that I remember a world without the internet at all. And so I kind of got to witness the coming of the internet, the mainstreaming of it, and then the mainlining of it. And it was a really exciting thing to watch as someone both inside the industry and as a consumer of technology, as a consumer of stuff. I really enjoyed watching that evolution of digital and e-commerce right from its nascency, right in the beginning, right from Hotmail email addresses and AOL and all sorts of dial-up internet and 36 baud
Yeah.
modems, and getting kicked off the internet when your family used to get on the phone when you were online. And so it was such a journey to watch. But I think that measurability piece is so key, because back then, especially if you were in physical media of any kind or TV, radio, whatever it was, really you only had marketing mix modeling. That was really
Yeah.
the only way that you could reasonably measure the performance of any of your, let's put it broadly speaking, marketing activity. And so to go from that, it felt very much like throwing a dart at the dartboard, or you could kind of make the data say whatever you wanted to. If the CEO loved TV and they loved seeing their brand on TV, then you could easily pull the right lever to make him feel or her feel that they were getting awesome value out of TVCs, or that they were getting awesome value out of a newspaper article, or that they were getting awesome value out of drive time radio advertising, right? And so I feel like all of a sudden, businesses that started to do digital, they got a serious reality check on where their investments were making the biggest impact, because we could see it in near real time. And even
Yeah.
very early versions of Google Analytics gave us more information about what we were doing than any physical media ever could. And so that feels like a really big turning point for being able to demonstrate the value of digital investments.
I couldn't agree more. It used to cost a lot of money when you were planning an ad campaign with research companies, and you had to do it in waves, and you'd have to have focus groups, and a lot of the budget would go to, yeah, what's the impact of that? So yeah, like you said, with the Google Analytics, it was just incredible. It was like a real eye opener, and just being able to have that insight, but then understand as well, like the countries where the visitors are coming from and the traffic, and then where are they landing. It really was a game changer. And then obviously social media and LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn as well. And I was an early adopter of that. Somebody recently, I think it was 2007, I joined LinkedIn, something.
Yep. Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
was around '06. So yeah, it would have been about the same time.
Yeah. And again, being able to connect with communities and have discussions with people in completely different parts of the world it was just a real game changer and an opportunity. And I think those of us that adopted it early, we've really seen that transformation.
And I think what was really interesting at the time, because I went to work for an agency very early on and then started my own e-commerce business laterally, but I was working primarily, so we had two branches of the agency. One was web development for e-commerce and the other one was digital marketing. And I was running the digital marketing side of the business. And it felt like we were, and if you were technical, because most digital marketing back then had a technical bent. You had to understand what Google was looking for from a technical perspective, from a tagging perspective, from a description perspective, from a keywords perspective, from a page display perspective. And we rapidly moved away from frame-based websites. We rapidly moved away from really heavy Flash-based websites because we rapidly got wrapped across the knuckles by Google if we did anything technically wrong or
Yeah.
even technically black hat. We would find ourselves out of the index. And then we would join link building and link swapping directories, and getting your name into 50 plus global link directories was like your primary mandate. And then making sure that your link text was relevant, making sure that your internal linking was relevant, making sure that clear URL paths were relevant. And so really those very early days of digital marketing, and I remember the days when AdWords was 5 cents a click for almost any industry, right? And
Yeah.
even insurance was like 5 or 10 cents a click, and now I think it's $56 a click or something crazy like
Yeah.
that. And we were there in that really early nascent period where you couldn't just have marketing chops, you had to have digital marketing chops. And there was so
Yeah.
many technical aspects of it that if you weren't you either had to work with someone technical to help you implement that, or you had to be technical yourself. Otherwise, you just were not going to get found online, right?
Absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned about Black Hat. I really started to refine my digital skills when I was a sales and marketing director for a property portal in the south of France. And I could brand it because I'd done branding. I could write copy, I could make it look pretty, but I actually didn't have those technical skills, and I couldn't do the SEO. But I knew I was being lied to, and I knew that there were black hat tactics going on. And these, you've got an instinct for it, right? You know your product. So I didn't know how to prove that at the time. So that was it for me. I was like, I'm never going to be lied to again. But I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to really understand and how to do this properly to measure it so that I can understand what's going on. And obviously there were like tools were starting to come out then, but like you said, I liked those flash websites that we used to build because they were quite fun and you
Yeah.
had interesting things. But obviously 2013 mobile came along, killed all that. All the algorithms changed. And so, yeah, it was, oh my God, that was 13 years ago now. And that was a big change then, wasn't it? To like the mobile first era. So I think it's quite exciting now what's happening now as well, and the progress that's gone on since then. Because do you remember building in PHP?
Oh
I mean,
yes, 100%. We were one of the first agencies to do builds on OS Commerce, and so
wow.
we were doing full builds on OS Commerce, and then latterly Magento, and yeah,
Yeah.
I was there right through the earliest days, right through to the SaaS revolution, and Shopify and Volusion and Big and all the rest of those that most of them have gone by the wayside now, except for Shopify, really. And so it's interesting to see the repeating patterns play out over time, right? And so I feel like we're going back to a time now, particularly with AEO and GEO, where if you don't technically understand how these platforms want to index your content and how they want to present context back to the user, you will be just as a rudderless ship today as you would have been back in the early Google days if you were non-technical. And I feel like that is the area that, obviously, fast forwarding to what you're doing now, it feels like maybe we're not repeating history, but it rhymes. And so the reality is that we're seeing a lot of the same battle play out. Google, it wasn't clear from day one that Google was going to win the search engine wars. I remember Ask Jeeves. I remember the 4 or 5 competing search engines at the time. And I don't think anybody knew, at least at the start, that Google was going to grow to absolutely dominate all online discovery, right? And I don't think we know yet which LLM, especially the frontier vendors, I don't think we know which one is, or if there's going to be an all dominant LLM vendor either. Obviously the Perplexities and the Claudes and the Geminis of the world and they're all doing, all the tier 1 LLMs are doing fierce battle, spending billions and tens of billions of dollars a year on LLM investment and development investment. But I don't think it's clear yet exactly where this is going to land in terms of dominance. And so I think it feels very early, very like mid to late 90s. That's kind of feels where we're at from an LLM perspective versus where we were in the search engine war era. And it's interesting because just like back then, and I'd love your take on this, Google trained the world to make web queries based on 1, 2, and 3 word queries. Because rapidly, anything more than about 3 words, and it lost all context, and the results turned to crap. And what I'm finding now is that even site search on e-commerce websites was modeled on Google search, where the performance is best with 1, 2, or 3 word queries. You go beyond that, and it's pretty crap. Now, I feel like the LLMs are training people to have conversational search discussions. And I feel like that new world of complete context, if I'm searching for running shoes and I'm talking to Gemini or I'm talking to Grok or I'm talking to Manus, I'm probably going to say, hey, look, I'm a runner. I'm 51 years old. I've been running for 20 years. I know I have a high arch. I do mostly road running. Oh, and by the way, I run at 2,000 meters of altitude, and my average distance is 3K a day, or whatever it is. What is the best current running shoe for me, my style, my size, all that sort of stuff? I'm going to give the LLM massive conversational context to then recommend a shoe for me, right? And this is so anathema to the 1, 2, or 3 word queries of old that even vendors and merchants got trained by Google to give really short, punchy, non-contextual data about their products that can answer very granular, tight 1, 2, 3 word queries. And I feel like a lot of brands have lost the ability to storytell as a result. And so this new world, at least as far as I can tell, and look, we've never worked together, I've never used your platform Amped, but it feels like you built Amped specifically to bridge that knowledge gap between the old world dominated by Google and the new world dominated by LLMs.
No, absolutely. And it is because I have that marketing background as well, not just a technical SEO background. So for me, actually, the opportunity is about building brands and communities within these chat LLMs. Because like you said, like in that prompt then, I remember my first prompt to ChatGPT was literally 3 words. I was quite scared of it. But now, like you said, people are giving so much information about themselves over to these LLMs, but it's a real opportunity for brands to connect and build communities based on their values, not just 55 characters in a page title or 155 in a meta description now, because the looking across all of your digital touch points now. PR is back in a big way, podcasts in particular,
Oh yeah.
bigger podcasts, really important. No, so absolutely. So yes, I agree with you on the technical side of things. Like it feels like that we definitely cover that on the platform as well. But for me, coming from that creative background as well, it's also an opportunity to have creative content again. It's like, let's have concepts, let's like communicate in a human way. And isn't that odd that the bots are now allowing us to be more human and search in a more human way using natural language rather than, like you said, we've been trained by Google to get into search. So yeah, I think it's really exciting. And so it means like film as well. So you've got your transcripts in there, but it's about talking, it's engaging, it's creating communities, and it's understanding what are people looking for. That's really important. And so it's not just, okay, Google Trends did that and the keywords did that as well, but this is definitely more on a human level in a way that people are engaging and what are they asking. And on the B2B side of it, it's based on corporate policy. You've got, I think it was Forrester have said it's something along the lines of 89% of B2B sales now start using AI. And if you think about that, there'll be a lot of guardrails, and that's why Copilot's so good on an enterprise level, and everyone wants to sell to enterprise. And they will be saying, based on our corporate policy that's already in Copilot, find me a SaaS that does X, Y. It's absolutely incredible. Such an opportunity. And the stats on the D2C are also equally astronomically high as well on how consumers, I think it's over 50% now of US consumers are actively engaging with the chat LLMs to find new products. And it's something like, oh, I can't remember the exact stat, around 60% of AI shoppers have bought a new brand based on a prompt. That's incredible. And
Isn't
that's
that
such
crazy? Isn't that crazy?
opportunity.
Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? Because it used to
Yeah.
be, I was very concerned even a couple of years ago, particularly as virtual worlds started to get a little bit of traction and all the virtual headsets started to hit the mainstream and Web3 was starting to become a thing and all that sort of stuff. And I was really worried that in that environment that I coined a term back then, and you look, we speak about automatic commerce, and one of the things that was concerning back then was if we have, for example, if we had cameras in our fridges and we had cameras in our cupboards and our pantries, and we said, okay, I want to automatically, when I'm down to half a dozen eggs left, when I'm down to when I've got only 1 kilo worth of beef left, when I'm down to the last tub of peanut butter, when I'm down to all these things, we want to automatically reorder certain things that we like, and we want that to happen in a way that we don't recognize. I felt we were going down a path where we would not recognize transactions as transactions anymore because the vast majority of them would be automated. And I
Yeah.
felt that we were even going to have that for clothes with a RFID chip and with Bluetooth, etc. We now can detect, because I remember Levi's about 10 years ago came out with a Bluetooth embed in one of their jeans jackets that could tell wear rates on the jacket, right? And so you could tell when it was threadbare. And so if I like Levi's jeans, for example, and I know that after 50 washes or 60 washes, it's now going to be threadbare, I'm going to chuck them out, and I just want a new set of 501s to turn up at my door. How does discovery happen in a world where we've predefined all the products we want in our life and they just automatically come when they need to come, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's super interesting how with LLMs, we've wound back the discovery model to where now we are doing discovery regardless of brand, right?
Yeah.
In many instances, we're not saying what's the best Nike running shoe anymore. We're saying here's how I like to run, here's how I run, here's information about me, my body, and where I run. You tell me, regardless of brand, maybe it's On now, maybe it's another brand, maybe it's an Adidas brand, maybe it's whatever it might be. Maybe it's Brooks. Maybe it's old man New Balance making a resurgence, right? And so what I find interesting is that it feels in many respects like these LLMs are actually taking away a lot of the incumbent brand leadership and making space for new brands that tell better stories. And that's very interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think that's where the community spirit comes into it. And like you said, it's those challenger brands. If they adopt now, there's definitely a chance for them to dominate that category as well, because they're prompting on, they want sustainable packaging. That's really big in Europe, and there's new legislation coming in for that. You want biodegradable this, or you don't want greenwashing, or based on my look, or so it's really becoming very personal now, and there is that opportunity there. And I do think for independent brands or challenger brands, there is a massive opportunity for them, but they've got to pivot quickly, because if you think a year ago, nobody had heard of AEO or JEO, and it was like, what is that? And that was when I started AMPS. I started to do the research on that, and like I said, in my government role, we were talking about that internally as well. And I was like, I actually, at one stage, I even thought the whole structure of the internet might change, from your top level domain name
Yes.
and your website structure. I was seeing things about dark stores as well as agent to agent things happening. But I do honestly believe it's an opportunity now to train. It is to train, because we are still training them, remember, right? So
Oh,
it's
yes.
not about, it doesn't have to be a big global conglomerate brand. You can have a challenger brand, and maybe you're really niche and you like running, and even by geography as well, and by demographic. It's just a real opportunity for them to grow, and grow internationally as well. I think cross-border. You've got all the complications of that to go with the logistics of it. But in terms of outreach and building your brand and gaining new customers, it's a huge opportunity. I think it's super exciting.
I think even from a personal brand, regardless, whether you're selling physical goods, whether you're selling services, doesn't really matter. If you're trying to build credibility online, so for example, for many years, I put out nearly a post a day on LinkedIn. I've nearly over 700 podcast episodes released now across all the audio podcast platforms as well as YouTube. But I have started to discover that I'm getting more traction in the LLMs in some respects from all the work I'm doing on Reddit and the questions that I'm answering on Reddit and the interaction, because I'm one of the 0.1% on Reddit that doesn't hide behind an alias, right? I've got my real name on there, I've got my real profile on there, and not like 99.9% of people on Reddit use an alias. And so for those of us that don't use an alias, we really stand out, right? And it can be attributed to us, and I've got links in my profile to my link tree and everything else. And so everything that I do on Reddit is attributed to me and my name.
Yeah.
And it's the same on Substack. Now that I've started publishing on Substack, all that that long form content is getting indexed by the LLMs. I link to all of those on my profile page on my website. So I link to all my channels, all my podcast channels, all my written channels, all my social channels. They're all linked to directly from that canonical homepage of my bio with all my details on it on my bio page. And it's just super interesting how it used to be LinkedIn was it. If you wanted to do any kind of personal brand building, LinkedIn was the only place that you could do that, right? And even if you were trying to build a business and get the word out about your business, LinkedIn was kind of it. And now it's really interesting to see, because these LLMs are sucking all of the data out of Reddit and all of the data out of Substack to train them. They're also picking up our content from those channels. And so it's from an authority perspective, from a relevancy perspective, from a currency perspective, these channels are super important in that world, aren't they?
Absolutely. I'll be honest. 10 years ago, Reddit, I was like, it's not for me.
Yeah.
I've got no need for Reddit. Also, I'm in the UK, and it was very US focused then.
Yes.
And I saw it more for gamers and that kind of community.
Yeah.
And I was at Cannes Lions 3 years ago, and Reddit was there, and I went to their stands to try and understand more about it. Came away going, still not sure that's for me. Of course, now I'm on there as amped, but I'm like desperately going, oh, we're going to learn Reddit now because it is so important to that training data. And you're right, Substack is a massive challenger as well to LinkedIn. I'm all up for challenging and more channels and opportunities. I think that's a great idea, as much as I love LinkedIn, and I do love LinkedIn. But yeah, it's interesting now. So this is part of the problem, isn't it? Is how do you find time to do all that? You have a life, you have families, people are running businesses, and you've got to do all this extra across all these new digital touch points as well, and build up credibility and the followers. It all takes time, and it can be quite overwhelming and exhausting, I think, for quite a few, especially smaller business owners as well, or small marketing teams and agencies. Actually, it's a tough time for agencies at the moment, I think, because especially I think last year everyone was like, oh, AI can do all of this and create all the content. I think they said I was at Cannes Lions, and I think now there's a big, again, it's almost going back, realizing, okay, yeah, they're great and they make it more efficient, but you need the human in the loop. And you need that for that creativity and that initial spark for the concept. But yeah, it's how everybody's meant to do all this and do their day job. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I guess, at least speaking for myself, I've built it into, so I spend 8 to 10 hours a week on content every week, week
Yeah,
in, week out. It's in my calendar. It's blocked out, time for recording, time for editing, time for
yeah,
production of written content, time for long form posts, short form posts, shorts, clips taken from my full podcast episodes for all the short video channels. And I've just built it in as part of my work routine. And I
yeah,
found that I had to do that. Otherwise, it was not going to get done. And so
yeah,
it's just as important as a small business owner. It is just as important to me to be keeping my pipeline full. In fact, in many cases, it's more important. I have to spend 50 to 75% of my time creating content to be a magnet, because I don't want to be a lasso. I'm going to be a magnet, right? And so I have to spend 50 to 75% of my work time making sure that I'm visible out there in the world, that I'm
yeah,
communicating, that I'm interacting, and then 25 to 30% of my time actually delivering the work. And I think that's something that a lot of small business owners, and I see this with consultants all the time. I see experts in their field, they become a consultant because they want more freedom in their life, but and I see them become a consultant, they announce it on LinkedIn or something like that, and then I see 12 months later they quietly slink back to industry because they
yeah.
realize that, hey, I'm really good at doing the work, but I am really shit at sales, and I am really shit at marketing my own services, my own capability. I'm really crap at keeping a pipeline full, and this is way too stressful. I'm going to go back to industry and just doing the doing, right? And so I think it's a really interesting time if you are early to this stuff, as you rightly point out. And I guess that's what you've built AMPT for, to help people be early to this, help them
Yeah.
identify gaps, and help them fill the gaps. So tell me what AMPT is and does, and precisely why you built it.
Okay. AMPT is an end-to-end AI citation intelligence and revenue platform. And in normal words, that means we help businesses, brands, and products be cited across 10 chat LLMs in 18 languages across the globe. That's what that means. It's about visibility on the chat LLMs. And the reason that I've built AMPT is because I come from that advertising background. And then I worked for 7.5 years for the UK government, where I supported around 7,000 companies, talking to CEOs, talking to CMOs, and talking exactly about that time, resource, money challenge triangle, and how do you adopt to markets overseas, especially I feel for the UK going to the US because of language. People think it's easy, but they don't really understand, one, how big the States is. It's just overwhelming as a Brit, quite honestly. Even just going to New York, it's like, wow, the States is so big and this is one city. And it's also understanding the differences between the states as well, but also for the States coming over then to Europe, very different markets, even down to the chat LLMs that are being used.
Yep.
And I'm finding that globally as well. What's being used in Obviously, like the Far East is more like DeepSeek, but what's been used in like Australia compared to, say, India, or India to France or Germany, and then what the UK is using to France or Germany, and it's very close compared to the US as well, or like Brazil or Latin America. And this is where I think the opportunities are. So this is why I've built AMPT. It's bringing all of that experience together to create a platform that is easy to use. And I say businesses, brands, or products because business might be like AMPT is not a brand, AMPT is a business. But a brand might be like a fashion label. You've mentioned people like Nike or Adidas, or so in terms of your brand, how is your brand perceived by the chat LLMs? And that's why I say that's the real opportunity for community building through the brand values there. But then for products as well, that's on a SKU level. So if you know your competitors' SKUs or who are being cited against a specific SKU, like your flagship product, then you can do an audit from that. So it does the whole visibility. Where are you? What's your position at the moment? Your citation position score, frequency index, and your share of voice. And then it takes you on a journey, horrible word, I know, or an adventure. Anyway, but so it's like looking at your entity. It looks at the semantics and building on SEO as well, your EEAT, takes you through the context relevance. Then it also looks at the high intent prompts. So what's the prompt that you want to be known for? What are the prompts being asked around that? Where's the highest value? And what's the fan out from that as well? And then it shows you and this is per platform as well. And so it does it per platform, per market, against your competitors, and how are they performing on the platforms and in the markets. Then in the markets, it says, what are those prompts, say, in Mexican Spanish compared to Spanish in Spain, or Chilean Spanish? You really drills down into that. For the US, it does a state by state analysis as well, because obviously very different and so many languages spoken in the state. That was my first mistake when I went over to New York, was, oh, okay, not English speaking, multi-language,
Yes.
multi-languages. So you can really hone in on that. And then it gives you the output as well. So it tells you your business impact analysis. So like, what would your AI attributed traffic, should you expect from that? How do you measure that? There's a pixel, but you've got like what your ROI should be, what your CAC should be. Then it actually has a content plan on there as well, when you should do this, when you should implement it, when you should expect your ROI to be. And then it creates the content as well for you. So it'll say, for example, because the algorithms are different. This is the challenge now. For 20 odd years, we optimized for one algorithm. Now you've got so many algorithms. So it's really understanding about your ideal customer profile as well. So if you're more of a disruptor or a creative, you're probably going to be on Grok.
Yeah.
Okay, Grok's great. It is.
Yeah.
Or Meta AI as well.
Yeah.
Such clever tools. But if you are like, want to do deep research, or you come from that mindset, then maybe you're on Perplexity or
Yeah.
Claude or ChatGPT. I think people, real users of it, are on one or two platforms as well.
Mm.
So now you've got to think, okay, so my web page isn't being optimized for Perplexity, so I need to create content on that. So then it creates content for Perplexity algorithm. And so it does the action as well to overcome this time resource. And where do you start? It says these are your red flags now. This is where you've got to start. This is what you do now. Literally do this now, and then build on the rest. That's AMPT.
I like the acronym you use on the website, and as I said before, we've never worked together, but also I kind of have to go by what's on the tin, so to speak, on the website. But
Yeah.
AMPT is an acronym: Analyze, Map, Produce, Deploy. And you say 4 pillars: 1 platform, 0 fragmentation, a closed loop methodology, track what AI platforms are saying, diagnose why, create content engineered to change it, then deploy and measure the impact. That is the AMPT framework. And so underneath analyze, you've got these 4 or 5 tick boxes. You got map, these 4 or 5 tick boxes. Same with produce and deploy. And I think being able to do some predictive analysis on business impact and then being able to do retrospective performance analysis on that after further down the track, I think that allows businesses, brands, and people to then connect the dots between activity they're taking, money they're spending, and how much
Yeah.
either they might not be looking for top revenue. They might be looking for profitability. They might be looking for more leads. They might be looking for every business's goals are slightly different, right? And if
Yeah.
I'm VC funded, I might not mind losing money for the first 5 years, right? I might not care. I might be looking for purely for market share, right? So I think understanding what a business's goals are and then targeting your content to achieve those goals becomes a really important exercise.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really important to have that on a platform. And I believe that we are one of the few, if not the only one, that actually does that. But again, that comes from my marketing background and working with the 7,000 C-suite as well. Because if you're a business owner, as we both are, it's like, well, why should I spend that money? You work hard for that money. Why? What am I going to get from it, right? But if you are a CMO, then maybe you've got to justify that to your CFO and your CEO. This is why my team need to do this, and this is why you've got to give me money. Or why are you maybe going to take some budget from somewhere else and redeploy that, because that's risky. Or if you're an agency, it comes from how are you going to convince your clients that they're missing an opportunity here? Because it's hard for agencies, as we've said, and we're both from agency backgrounds. You've got to constantly defend your position, provide added value, and provide insight. So it comes from that mentality as well. So it's there to support everybody, to justify and to give them some look. There's no a direct kind of traffic that's been analyzed or released at the moment. So we can only use a good mathematical formula to say this is what that's going to be. So we use based on traffic that we know that's been released, based on an 11.4% conversion rate that SimilarWeb also have said. Some go up to 35% conversion rate through AEO on the chat LLMs, and others are less. So I think 11.4 is quite moderate and fair, still considerably higher than traditional search results. And that's how we then basically work out those mathematical figures for you. But I think it's really important that you at least then have a benchmark or a target. At least you know you've got something to work towards, because otherwise you're just analysing for what? So what if my CFI is 67 on ChatGPT? What can I expect from that? And again, this is why I built the platform when I was building it. And I'm like, so what? Or why does it say that? Or I didn't like what it was saying. So I would challenge when I was building it, and why, but why? And then I want to know, how am I going to fix that? And when should I fix that? So again, I come from that mentality. And so everything's got a so what on it. Everything clicks through so you can understand why. I want to see the raw data as well. So that's all shareable. Everything's downloadable so that then you can manipulate it as much as you want, really. Squeeze it, stretch it, get whatever you can out of it. It's there to be used. And it's there to be easy. The tools on there as well, like so I did a lot of work with small e-com business owners, and a lot of them were female. And I would say when I was doing my audits, oh, good news is you've got 11,000 keywords that you can optimize. Here's a CSV file. And you'd just see them drain. And I'd go, oh, and don't forget your JSON structured data. And they're like, what? So it's got tools on there that are like really easy to use. So based on the high volume prompts, then there's an FAQ generator that is schema. So then you can go in there and it'll say, for example, what's the best GEO, AEO platform? I can answer. I can type in the answer, and then I can just copy that. And there's 30 of those and put it in my website. Schema compliant.
Wow. Wow.
Easy.
And obviously you didn't vibe code this platform. So did you work with developers, or how did you actually do the coding of your platform?
Yeah, so I have a CTO.
Okay. Awesome. So you've got a business partner who
Yes.
is the technical, and you're more the sales and marketing side of the platform.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love
I'm
that.
the
I
chatty
love that.
one.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. You're perfect for it. You're absolutely perfect for it. What is, if you were to look out over 6, 12, 18 months, you get much more than 18 months out, and it all gets a little bit fuzzy, even for those of us that live and breathe AI every day. But if you were to look out 6 to 12 months, what's next for Amped? What do you see as priority to? Is there anything you don't do that you see a market opportunity for, or is there anything your customers are asking you for that you don't yet do that you plan to add to Amped?
Yeah, so the live API feed into a product catalog. So I'm working with PIMs and DAMs. So what that means is you're going to get live data from the chat LLMs, and then that will then connect so that your catalog is constantly refreshed.
Updated.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's
that's
a
it. And
huge
I think
deal.
that's going to be the magic sauce. Yeah,
Yeah, it almost feels like a great integration point would also be PLMs, right? Because especially for manufacturers, PLMs would be a great entry point for a lot of this data
yeah,
to go into, because PLMs are typically pre-PIM. And then also, if you worked with Patronus or some of the other pre-PIM systems which do automated enrichment of product data, right?
yeah.
Then I think that's a great entry point for the platform too. But realistically, looking at your price points, there really is no reason. If I'm an e-commerce business and I want your pro plan $190 a month, if you can't afford $190 a month to get markedly better from a representation and discovery perspective in LLMs, do you really want to be in business? If that's a stretch for you,
I know,
then
right?
you kind of got to wonder, is your business viable, right? Because
Yeah,
you've pretty much democratized. Sure, you've got agency price, you got enterprise pricing, of course, and then you've got lower starter tiers. But the reality, that sweet spot right in the middle, that pro at $190 a month, like
yeah.
that's a pretty democratized access plan.
So again, that comes from working with all the business owners, and my desire to provide genuine support and genuine information. I'm not a greedy person. I have been challenged on my pricing. My CTO challenges me all the time, trust me. But I'm like, no, I want it to be genuine. I want it to be sincere. I want businesses to use it. I want to give them a fighting chance, because if they're not on the LLMs now, you're going invisible. And we talked about the stats uptake earlier. So it's more for me about, I don't need to have huge profit margins. It's about being fair. It's about being reasonable. And it's about being genuine about, this is the service and this is what I'm trying to do. And I'm genuinely trying to help all businesses, because whether it's B2B or D2C, sell cross-border, because again, that is my background. I've lived in different parts of the world and traveled a lot, and I love that about the world. And I think those cross-border opportunities are very different. So it is like Brazil is like massive on chat LLMs. And a lot of people don't realize this as well, the opportunities. And like some other markets, they've never really had a desktop or a laptop. So they're mobile first. Like there's like
Yes,
massive communities, obviously, like in Asia.
India,
Yes.
they almost
Yeah.
entirely skipped the desktop generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Africa as well. Just think how many people are like live in these countries that we're talking about. So yeah, they're on chat LLMs and they're early adopters and they're speaking to their phones. Now, you were saying
Wow.
about conversational commerce earlier, but this is what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. And so there's a real opportunity to reach out to them in the way that they communicate.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Look, we're going to shift gears for just a second here as we start to wrap up. What is something that most people don't know about you, or something that you love to do outside of work that really gets you revved up to be better at work?
Oh gosh. Okay, something about me. You didn't warn me that you were going to do that one, Jason.
I know I got to surprise you. Got to keep you guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I actually it is travel. I'm a bit of a secret anthropologist and I love languages.
Yep.
So I wouldn't say I even speak English badly, and that's my mother tongue, but I'm pretty good in French. I lived in Arabia for a long time, so my Arabic used to be a lot better. And I know some Farsi, bit of Hindi, but it's a bit of Italian, not a lot of Spanish. I really, after going to the States, actually, I realized I need to sharpen my Spanish. Imagine that. So I think it is my love of different cultures and understanding their motivational touch points as well, and any excuse to travel. I'm always up for that. I did study German, but my German's rubbish. But I was in Berlin after we met each other in London. I went to Berlin the following week, and oh, that's a cracking city. If
Yep.
you've never been to Berlin, get to
Haven't
Berlin.
been to Berlin yet.
Get to Berlin. It's an
Wow.
awesome city. Yeah, really cool. So I think it's that. I think it's my love of travel. I love people. I love talking to people. I love meeting people. I like understanding about different regions and cultures. And yeah, put all that into AMPT.
Wow, love it. That resonates with me. I'm now living in my third country and grew up in Southern California, lived in New Zealand for almost 30 years, and have been living in Mexico since 2023. And I
Cool.
think my wife and I are in about country 35 or something now of countries we've been to. So we
Awesome.
don't have kids, we don't want kids, and our life is all about our two dogs and traveling the world. That's what we absolutely live for. So we're totally on the same page there. Now, as
Well,
we come
mine's
down,
actually taking my daughter traveling. I'm determined for her to see the world, so she's got an open mind.
I think the more I travel and the more that I spend time in different countries, the more I realize we're all pretty much just the same. Governments and polis like to make a big deal out of the differences, but most people in the world, sure, there are always outliers, but for the most part, people just want to live their life. Most people don't even want to be rich. They just want to have a decent life. They want to be able to own their own home. They want to be able to look after their kids. They want to be able to eat decent. They want to be able to do a little bit of travel every year. The expectations for most people, and yes, I understand even what I've just described is in the top 1% of the 1% of the world,
Yeah,
given the amount of poverty in the world. And so I
yeah.
realize I'm saying that from a place of extreme privilege and luxury. In my experience, most people the world over want very similar things out of life. And they don't want much, but they want to be able to have a safe, happy life where they can feed them and their kids and they can have a roof over their head. And that's pretty much it. That's what it really comes down to. And I think that there's far more similarities between us than there are differences. Let's put it that way, regardless of what language you speak.
No, absolutely. And most people are nice.
Yeah.
And if they, so I know like my daughter was quite shy, but the penny's just dropped with her now that people are nice and that actually most people are quite shy really. But if you just talk to them, then they're nice. And if they're not, don't talk to them again.
Yeah, you just move on
So,
and you find somebody else that is
yeah,
nice. It's pretty
okay,
easy.
don't like you. I'll talk to somebody that does want to talk to me. Yeah, absolutely. I think most people are nice. Most people are helpful as
Yes.
well. Yeah,
Yes.
and want help as well. So yeah, I couldn't
I
agree
couldn't agree
more.
more. Now, I will drop a link to your LinkedIn profile and the AMPT website in the show notes. But other than that, how do you like people to reach out and have a chat to you about all things AEO, GEO, AXO, and all the rest?
No, you're right. It's LinkedIn. I'm still a LinkedIn nerd. I'm not. So
As
it's
am
on
I.
LinkedIn. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Perfect.
yeah.
Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you and let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. So, Emma Jones from AMPT, what is your question for me today?
Oh, that's a good one. I What dogs do you have?
They're both rescues. One we brought with us from New Zealand, and he's a Jack Russell Cross, and he is awesome. His name is Herbie. And then we rescued a Mexican street dog that parked herself outside of our townhouse complex, and she was there for about a week, and we were taking food out to her, and she just never left. So we decided if nobody else is going to adopt her, we have to adopt her, and she's a Border Collie Cross, and she's about 2 years old.
Ah, that's lovely. I think I like adopting animals as well. I do get rescue animals. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know. Sorry. Can I ask another one?
of course. Go.
I'll ask a professional one. I was just curious
Go
about
for
the
it.
dogs. Sorry, love animals. Yeah, I'm a
Absolutely.
big animal lover. So I was like, that's nice. What made you leave Southern California? Because obviously, when you live in the UK, Southern California sounds like an idyllic place to live. What made you leave Southern California to go to New Zealand, where the climate is definitely much more like the UK than Southern California? And
Yeah.
which part of New Zealand were you in?
So I started out in Christchurch, lived 10 years in Christchurch, and then lived the last 18 years in Auckland. Got a pretty good cross section, South Island, North Island, and
Yeah.
kind of everything in between. And the main reason for leaving the US was my parents. So I was already living on my own. I was already flatting. I was already working. I left in my early 20s, and my parents decided to move to New Zealand because my grandfather was a Kiwi, and
Oh,
my father and my mother could get residency first and then ultimately citizenship because of my grandfather being a Kiwi. And so they were looking for a change. And look, Southern California is a pretty nice place to visit, but it's from a smog, a crime, a traffic, a taxation perspective. There's lots of, apart from the weather, there's definitely plenty of downsides to living in a state like that, right? And so it was certainly not as liberal there as it is now. And so it's certainly become a really difficult place to build a business and to not get taxed to death and everything else, and to rebuild after a fire. It's all become pretty difficult to live in California, right? And great place to visit, but we were looking for a change. My parents did the research about my grandfather's history and found that they could get residency in New Zealand. They decided to go, and they said, look, you can come with us if you want to. And I was like, California's not going anywhere. I was always adventurous. I always loved to travel. I always loved to eat different foods. I always loved to meet different cultures.
Yeah.
And I thought, I absolutely hate it for whatever reason, then I can always come back. Worst case
Yeah.
scenario, I get on a plane and I come home. And we lived there. And then a lot of people don't know how bad New Zealand was during COVID and how locked down it was. And it was a prison basically for 3 years in New Zealand. It was, apart from Victoria in Australia, it was the most locked down place in the entire world during COVID. And so we swore up and down, the moment that this place opens back up, we're going to get the hell out of here and we're never going to come back. And so we're going to move to a free country, right? And so that was what drew us. There was lots of other reasons to make the move to Mexico, but that was like the last straw. Was COVID was pretty rough in New Zealand, and it's a remote country to begin with. And if you can't travel out of there for basically 3 years, it's real rough. And so, yeah, that was the journey. And then we've traveled to many other countries. We tend to travel to between 5 and 10 countries a year, both with work and with pleasure. And we just love it. My wife's Asian. She was born in New Zealand, but she's Chinese Vietnamese. And look, I've had friends and now relations from every region of the world, it feels like. And I really think that you brought up a really good point earlier. I think it gives you a level of empathy, and it gives you an education, even about business, in ways that nothing else does.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Travel for me is the most important thing to understand.
Yeah.
The best education you can have is to travel.
Couldn't agree
So do
more.
you know the hacker?
No, I never saw plenty of hakas in my lifetime. Of course, before every single All Blacks game, they do a haka. So seen the haka plenty of times, but never learned it. If anybody around the world who loves rugby or who loves New Zealand sport, they're gonna see a lot of hakas in their lifetime.
Yeah, I love the haka. Yeah, I'm a rugby fan.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Obviously the World Cup, massive here in Mexico. Huge parties, win or lose, Mexicans love to party. It's been an amazing few weeks to watch the Mexican culture go absolutely crazy over the World Cup, and especially the games that were played in Mexico. But anyways, it's been a fabulous conversation. I wish you every ongoing success with AMPT. I think it's a very cool tool, and I think it's timely. I think it's relevant, and I think it's super important for businesses to start thinking about these things. I can't wait to speak to you again soon and see how far you've come, maybe in a year or so.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. Thanks. And yeah, hopefully see you with the B2B E-commerce Association again soon.
You certainly will. You'll see me next year in London. I think it's going to be in May next year. So I think
Cool.
I can't remember exactly, but I think it'll be in May next year. So can't wait to see you in London the next time we're there.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.